So if everybody can take their seats, we're going to get started pretty quick here. So hi, I'm Colin Heider. I'm the chair of College Republicans here at St. Cloud. We'll have about an hour and a half debate for you tonight. So I'd like to introduce my minus one right now, but my two candidates. It's Jerry Ralph, who's running for Senate, and Representative Jim Knobloch, who is running for 14B.
Well, my opening's a little bit longer, so I apologize. Welcome and thank you so much for coming. My name is Britton Mickelson. I chair the College Democrats here at Scsu. With the help of the amazing volunteers from the College Dems and the College Republicans, we have created an event that started from a conversation over coffee to something that actually happened, which is pretty great. So this year, we get to decide if we want student issues to be talked about and if we want to be a part of that, or if we want to have other people make decisions for us without our input. I encourage you to pay attention tonight, and I highly encourage you to ask the candidates hard questions at the end. A few housekeeping things. All questions tonight have been prepared for by the College Dems and the College Republicans, not our moderator. And if you have a question you would like to ask personally, the event will be over at 6:30, and the candidates should and will be sticking around till about 7:30 to answer any questions. So feel free to come talk to them. They're nice people. There's also some group sign-up sheets, literature, and registration forms on the table out in the hallway for those of you that do want to get involved, and again, we highly encourage you to. If you want to learn more about voting, your rights, and things like that, the College Dems will have all the information you need, so you can vote confidently, often, and informed. Only once this election, though. If you are in Dr. Petrill's Political 111 class, you need to sign in, but we are holding that till the end of the event, so just stop by the College Dems table when the event's over. On the Democratic side today, we have Eric Putnam for House District 14A. We have Zach Dorhalt for House District 14B. And Dan Wolgamott for Senate District 14. So, our moderator tonight is Dale Zacher from the Mass Communications Department. I also wanted to thank the Faculty Association, Student Government, the Political Science Department, and the Sociology Department for sponsoring the event. I did want to take a moment, though, because many of you have heard about the tragedy, the school shooting in South Carolina. So I think it would be appropriate at an event like this to take just a moment of silence for the situation, but also for the challenges in the world, both home and abroad. So if you want to take a little bit of time for a moment of silence, please do. All right, well, again, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for being here, and thank you for wanting to become an informed voter. Our first debaters tonight will be Dan Wolgamott and Jerry Ralph. And by a flip of the coin, the Republicans will go first. They will get the very first question, and then we will switch it up. Are you ready, Dale? All right.
Are we supposed to sit? Or?
Yep, you can sit. 90 seconds for an intro.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. I want to thank the College Republicans and Democrats, together with SCSU, for putting this together. Many people have asked me why I would be running for the state senate. Why would I enter the arena? And the answer is very simple. I've lived in this community about 30 years. It's been very good to me. It has supported my family. It's supported my business. It supported me while I was an attorney. And when John Peterson decided not to run, I felt that this was an opportunity to put something back into the community. Just a little bit about me. I've been an attorney for about 30 years. During that time, it was my job to bring parties together who really didn't even want to be together, not even in the same room. So my job was to try and reach settlement between those parties. I did that for almost 30 years. I then went on to become a small business owner. The thing that is important that I think we should keep in mind is we need to use critical thinking when we're working with political issues. We have to examine ideas, and all ideas. Just because you're on one side of the aisle or the other doesn't mean you have a monopoly on ideas. The other thing is that we need to take those ideas and put them into what I call the crucible of reason. We must look for logical conclusions. We must carry things out to their the logical end and look for unintended consequences. This is the way I approach things. This is the way I approached it as an attorney, and this is how I intend to approach it as your state senator. I appreciate your time, and thank you for coming.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Walgamot, and I'm running for the Minnesota Senate right here in St. Cloud, District 14. I just really want to thank everyone for being here. I got to meet with some students before and hope to meet with more afterwards, but I know you have a lot going on with papers and tests and everything else that college life throws at you, so to have this room full of such fresh and energetic people is really exciting. A little bit about me. I live here in St. Cloud with my wife, Nicole, and our two beautiful daughters, Lily, who is a 4th grader at Oak Hill, and Polly, who is a 10-month-old who just learned how to crawl. And and I'm running for the Senate because, I'll be honest with you, I was so disappointed with all the bickering and the procrastinating and gridlock we've been getting lately. There is so much at stake in this election and for our community, in all corners of our community, but particularly here on campus. For the past month and a half, I've had the great privilege of getting to go with some college students, some who are here tonight, through the dorms and registering students to vote. And there's so much at stake with our colleges and universities here in St. Cloud. Our state has not done a good enough job of making you a priority, and I want to change that. There are key projects throughout our state and throughout our community that haven't been funded because of the gridlock. Especially here on campus, Eastman Hall, we've got to get it renovated. So the stakes are so high, and we can't afford to keep electing these same old, out-of-touch, ineffective, good old boy politicians. We need somebody who's going to bring a fresh perspective, who's going to be accountable, and who's going to work extremely hard to bring people together to get things done. That's why I'm running for the Senate, and I'm excited to hear your questions and get to know you better throughout the conversation tonight.
All right, thank you, candidates. We're now going to begin with the question portion of the debate. I'm going to ask a question. Each of you will get 2 minutes to respond to it, and the first person, though, that answers the question, which will be Jerry Ralph, you will get a 1 minute, up to a 1 minute response. If you something you want to add to your original answer, and then we'll flip-flop to the beginning. Who gets the first question, the next question after that? So the first question is, do you believe that there are systematic issues with our criminal justice system with regards to its treatment of racial minorities?
Well, let me answer that question by saying that regardless of the circumstances, whether there is bias or not, good community relations is good policy. So what we want to do is foster the idea that it doesn't matter whether there's bias or not. We should be treating it as if we are trying to create a community between the law enforcement and between the various segments in the community. So I want to first of all say I absolutely salute Chief Anderson and Mayor Kleiss for the work they've done in the community to try to bring people together. The police department is well trained. They have tried to build social capital. They are engaging in projects such as the Cop House, which is going to be a project on the south side that will involve 3 dedicated officers, as well as other service providers in a building right within the local area. This, I think, is an extremely important method of building community relationships. I think it's also important that we build relationships between the various segments of the community, that we should not ignore the fact that we have a very diverse and actually, I think, wonderful community here. So in terms of dealing with bias and prejudice, the more that we can do to have the police departments and the administrations create policies that bring people together, I think that in itself will take us a long ways towards curing any bias that does exist. So, as I say before, I don't think it matters that it's there as long as we take the right steps in the community to bring people together.
Right. Dan Wolgamott, I'll ask a question again. You've got 2 minutes. Do you believe that there are systemic issues with our criminal justice system with regards to its treatment of racial minorities?
Well, I'm a very strong believer in our country's national motto, E pluribus unum, which means out of many, we are one. We are one community, and whether it be within our criminal justice system, within our economy, within our schools, with our healthcare, within any segment of our society, there is no room for discrimination or intolerance here in the state of Minnesota. And I'm very committed, as our next senator, to making sure that we work all across the community to stamp out any instances where that's occurring. Mr. Ralph is absolutely correct. Chief Anderson, we are so proud of our police chief and our local law enforcement for how they handled the incident at the mall. And I'm very much committed to making sure that our local law enforcement get the resources that they need from the state to be able to do their jobs and keep us safe. And I'm very, very proud of the fact that I have been endorsed by the police because of my commitment to that. Our officers face a lot of challenges, from driving to having to investigate crimes and de-escalate situations. We need to make sure that there are resources in place, that they get world-class training. So again, we've got to do everything we can throughout the state to make sure that everybody gets a fair shot, everybody gets a good opportunity, and again, there is no room for discrimination in the state of Minnesota.
Okay, Jerry Ralph, because you went first, we give you up to a minute to add anything to your original answer.
Thank you. The only thing that I would add is that as a state senator, you only get one in the district. I have to represent everybody. That means everybody from every aspect of the community, every segment of the community. And what my job is to take their concerns to the state and use my influence to develop policy that will help bring about this harmony that we would like to see. So that is my commitment, that I will represent everyone in the district from both sides of the aisle and carry ideas down to the Senate that will help foster a community that is together. Thank you.
All right, let's move to our next question. This will be starting off with Dan Wilgemont. Without a special session, a bonding bill looks to be out of reach for 2016. How would you have worked towards a bonding bill getting one passed, or would you oppose one altogether?
I am a strong supporter of day one. We have got to pass a robust bonding bill. For those who might not be experts on bonding bills, there are a lot of projects at stake, public infrastructure projects, that typically get passed in even-numbered years. There are sometimes smaller bonding bills in odd-numbered years. And there were a lot of key projects locally that did not get the support they need from the state because of the gridlock in the legislature. And again, that's one of the biggest reasons I'm running. I work as a realtor here in our community. So my job is bringing people together to reach agreements. Every day I work as hard as I can in my client's best interests to get them top dollar. But ultimately, it's my job to reach out to other agents from other offices. We'll try and put a deal together that, guess what, both sides aren't always 100% happy with. But we work in good faith, and we find a solution that's mutually beneficial enough, and we move forward. And we've really lost that in our politics these days. So absolutely, we've got to have a strong bonding bill that, and local projects got to be fixed right away. There's money for security upgrades to our prison here in St. Cloud that are much needed. There's money for our veterans for the Minnesota National Guard Armory here in St. Cloud. And extremely important, there's renovations for Eastman Hall here on campus. You've all seen Eastman Hall. It's an empty gym now. But with some help from the state and with our elected officials coming together, we can transform that into a world-class health center. This is so exciting. It's a historic building built back in 1929 with $225,000 from the state. We get to double down on that investment and take this historic building and transform it into a 21st century health center. We have got to come together. We've got to pass a bonding bill, and that's what I'm committed to doing on day one.
All right, Jerry Ralph, same question. You've got 2 minutes. Without a special session, a bonding bill looks to be out of reach for 2016. how would you have worked towards getting a bonding bill passed, or would you have opposed one altogether?
First of all, we do have to have a bonding bill. We have to have roads, we have to have bridges. There is, my opponent has referred to the special projects here on St. Cloud State, which I totally support, and which were in the bill. I think what we need to do is back up for a minute and ask ourselves why. Why didn't this happen? Part of the reason is that there is this go along, and then all of a sudden, when we get to the end of the session, everybody is trying to get things done all at once. What I would like to see worked on as a policy matter is to try to push back the budget process, to make goals set early, to get people the information they need in the legislature to be able to form conclusions that will allow us to reach agreement on the bonding bill, that will allow us to cross party lines if necessary and make arrangements and agreements. I also have to refer to the fact that my experience, as I referred to in my opening statement, is as an attorney. And as an attorney dealing with adverse parties, and I'm not talking about just people who want to buy and sell a house. I'm talking about people who are throwing rocks at each other. And throughout my life as an attorney, it was my job to get those people to come together, to sit down in the same room and reach an agreement, which I did. So I believe that with some changes in the procedures down at the legislature, and with good people who want to get the job done working together, I think we can get a bonding bill. I think we can reach agreement, and I think we can heal some of this partisanship. So that's kind of what I'm committed to doing, is to try to go down and build good relationships, use my skills to try and help people to come together on solutions. Thank you.
All right, Dan Woldemont, because you went first with this question, you get up to a minute to add anything to your answer originally.
Yes. One of the biggest things I was disappointed with our current senator, John Peterson, neither Mr. Elf nor I are our current senator. Our current senator actually was the tie-breaking vote to defeat a bonding bill in the Senate that had resources for all those key projects. And I was very disappointed. Again, it was just a classic case of partisan politics, political games at their worst. I took on our senator and challenged him as to why would he vote against those key projects. And Mr. Elf actually attacked me for that in the St. Cloud Times and said that he would not have supported that. So I'm consistently committed to passing a bonding bill, and will continue to be day one as our next senator.
Okay, moving on to our third question then. This is going to Jerry Ralph. We've got 2 minutes to respond to this. As you know, sexual assault continues to be a concern on college campuses. Do you support the passage of an affirmative consent law in Minnesota?
All right, well, first of all, I'd like to just back up on a moment, if I might. I think there was a misstatement made here, and I want to correct it. There were several votes that were cast against the bill. No one single senator cast the deciding vote. And I want to make that very clear, and I made that clear in the op-ed that I published in the paper, which was not an attack against Mr. Woldemont. It was simply a recitation of the facts. Now, with respect to sexual assault, I served on the board of Anna Marie's Alliance, which is the battered women's shelter, for almost 10 years. So I'm very well familiar with women's issues and with the issues that women who have been abused and sexually attacked are facing. Now, the question is should we have an affirmative consent law? My question is what wrong is that statute intended to correct? We have to think about this. What is affirmative consent? A woman says yes. Does that mean she no longer can say no? No is a much more powerful word than yes. We have laws on the books now that deal with and protect people who are vulnerable, who are under the influence of chemicals, who have physical disabilities. These laws protect those people, and we should use those laws to help make the campus safe. So I agree that we need to provide every possible support for women who are placed in a situation of sexual assault. They should not be treated as second-class citizens. They should have all of the protections of the law. So again, this is an example of critical thinking. What is this law intended to prevent? Thank you.
And Wilmot, you've got 2 minutes to answer the same question. Sexual assault continues to be a concern on college campuses. Do you support the passage of an affirmative consent law in Minnesota?
Well, this is a very personal question for me. Lily is a 4th grader, but before we know it, she'll be sitting here in a chair on a college campus. And absolutely, I want to make sure that her and her classmates and every student here at St. Cloud State can feel safe. And affirmative consent law is also known as yes means yes. Means that for sexual conduct to be consensual, that both participants give an affirmative yes. Right now, the status quo, and the yes means yes affirmative consent laws have been passed in a number of states already and on a number of campuses. Right now, the status quo, and no means no, gives the default benefit of the doubt to an abuser. And there are numerous studies and numerous cases that show that oftentimes if a woman is under attack, sometimes she will lock down or separate herself from a situation. There are a number of reasons why an unconsensual sexual partner is not have the ability to say no. So we need to make sure that we have good laws here on campus and in the state of Minnesota that protect everyone on our campus. I would certainly be open to supporting a affirmative consent law, one that is able to protect our students here on campus and hold abusers accountable.
Jerry Rolfe, because you answered this question first, you get up to a minute to amend your answer or add to it.
The issue here, folks, is consent. If a person is impaired or they are under some disability, any consent that they give, and this is black letter law, any consent they give is invalid. So to say that in order to have consensual sex, a person must say yes affirmatively belies and begs the question. Again, we must examine the purpose for which the law is being passed. Now, that being said, I am certainly in favor of a properly crafted law that expands the rights of women to protect themselves in situations where they don't have control, or even in situations where they are either under the influence or otherwise being influenced by some outside force. But I think we need to very carefully and critically examine how this law is to be drafted. Thank you.
All right, our fourth and last question. We'll start off with Dan Wolgamont. You've got 2 minutes to answer this question. Minnesota is becoming more economically and racially diverse, and that is reflected in our schools. How do you plan on closing the student achievement gap in our K through 12 schools?
One of the biggest reasons that I'm running this campaign for the Senate is education. And I think that to start to close the achievement gap in Minnesota, we have got to make strong investments in early childhood education. I know from experience with my daughters and experience in volunteering in my daughter's kindergarten classroom how critical those first years are, how formative a child's mind is. And right now in the state of Minnesota, only 15% of 4-year-olds attend a public early learning program. That ranks us among the lowest in the entire country. And very sadly then, it's no surprise that as a result, about 40 to 50% of kids in kindergarten class aren't prepared for kindergarten. So from day one, before they even get into kindergarten, they're already at an educational comparative disadvantage with their peers. That's unacceptable in Minnesota. We've got to turn that around. So one of the biggest things I want to do right from the get-go is start working towards increasing access to early learning and early childhood education, so that from day one we can start from day one of a child's life, of a child's school life, kindergarten, we can work towards closing that achievement gap.
Right. Jerry Ralph, you've got 2 minutes to respond to this question. Again, Minnesota is becoming more economically and racially diverse, and that's reflected in our schools. How do you plan on closing the student achievement gap in K through 12 schools?
Well, first of all, I think that what we need to do is examine why the gap exists. And early childhood education is not the only answer.
That's true.
So, excuse me, Dan. Thank you. Appreciate that. So what we need to do, I believe, is provide the school districts with tools to attack the gap. Let's take the fact that there are children who are not learning at the same level that others. Let's put programs in place that bring children to competency. For example, in 3rd grade, that they should be able to at least read English. By 6th grade, they should be able to read and write English, and they should be beginning to learn simple math. And by 12th grade, they should have reached the level of education where they can pass a proficiency exam that would allow them to become a student at a MnSCU university. Now, how do we do that? First of all, we have to look at the local school boards to help promote and to provide programs and curricula that lead to that. That means let's get the control back to the local school boards. Once they've decided on programs that they think are important, then we need to seek funding for those programs. And I am strongly in favor of funding to help close that gap by making sure every child gets a good education, and that every child, when they come out of school, can read, write, and do math. That, to me, is the critical part of the program. I think early childhood is fine. I think it should be voluntary, and I think it should not necessarily be forced on parents to send their kids to a public early childhood program. I think a warm, nurturing early childhood program in a private enterprise is just as beneficial, and maybe more so, than in a public school.
Dan Wilmot, as you answered this question first, you've got up to a minute to add to your answer.
Just one thing I also want to add is I want everyone here to know that I really strongly want to continue to support all-day kindergarten in Minnesota. That was something that Representative Dorholt, who you'll hear from soon, was able to work towards back in the 2013 session. And I know from my experience when Lily was in kindergarten, getting to go all day, just really we saw leaps and bounds improvement with her personally. So just also want to add that part of closing the achievement gap, part of just really making sure that all of our kids, no matter what neighborhood you're from, no matter what your zip code is, all of our kids deserve a world-class education.
All right, we're done with our questions, but we've got now 2 minutes for closing statements. So, Jerry, would you mind doing up to 2 minutes for closing statement?
All right. What I really want to bring to your attention is, first of all, I want you to think about the answers that have been given here. Do you want a candidate that has specific proposals, that doesn't talk in generalities, who brings maturity to the program, who has the life experience to be able to create those specific answers? If you've listened to the answers that we've been given, I've outlined specific programs in every case, in cases of policy, in cases of what we should do to support the school boards, in cases of what we should do about sexual assault. Every single thing is a specific program, and that is the expertise that I bring to this job. As a Marine officer, I learned that leadership is earned, not just inherited, that one earns leadership through respect. I also learned that in order to get people to work together, you have to get them to think alike. And that is what I do. I appreciate your time. My name is Jerry Ralph. I ask for your vote in November. Thank you very much.
Dan Wilmot, you've got the 2 minutes for closing statement.
Well, again, I'm Dan Walgamot, and I just want to give such a heartfelt thank you to everyone for being here tonight. Talking about earning respect, I've worked very hard to meet a lot of you in your dorms and in your apartments, and I'll continue to do that. There's so much potential, there's so much excitement in this room with each and every one of you here. And as if elected, our next senator, I'll continue to reach out to you. I want to be a very accessible, very strong advocate for students and for our colleges and universities here. And I again appreciate you being here. And I ask that you take my willingness to reach out to you and listen to you and be in tune with your needs and with your priorities, and take my experience as a realtor, as a football coach, as a parent, and send me to St. Paul to tackle your priorities. Thank you very much.
Our next candidates will be Zach Dorhall and Jim Knobloch for House District 14B. Sorry, I didn't have a mic.
All right.
I think so, yeah, because we're kind of done all. 90-second opening statement.
Well, good evening. My name is Zachary Dorholt. I'm a candidate for state representative in House District 14B, which is half of St. Cloud, including where you're sitting today. University Drive is the dividing line. So if you look by the hockey center, you're on the A side. This side, you're on the B side. It gets a little confusing, which I believe is part of why we sometimes have a hard time for people showing up like this. And the last time I've seen this among students show up for a political debate was back in 2004 when I was a student here. So this is really cool. I got my undergrad and one of my masters here at St. Cloud State. My freshman year tuition was $1,200, and back then I had a job that paid $9.50 an hour. I was able to pretty much pay cash that first semester. By the time I had graduated, tuition had more than doubled. When I did graduate, I had some student debt, like most folks did, but I was able to wrap that in at 2% interest. Then I came back to grad school a few years later, and tuition had skyrocketed, as all of you know, and interest rates have gone up. We've been drowning students in debt after telling them they need to go to college for well over a decade now. I'm a dad, I'm a counselor, I'm a musician. My full-time job here in St. Cloud, I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor at the Central Minnesota Mental Health Center, where I work with adults who live with serious and persistent mental illness, such as schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. The people I work with are from all walks of life, whether they're right off the street, out of the hospital, or have PhDs and live with depression. It's, I guess, the passion I have for people in the shadows is why I'm running for office again.
Well, first of all, thank you to the Republicans and Democrats for setting up this debate, and thank you for all of you coming here. Just a little bit of background on myself. I am Jim Knobloch. I'm the current state representative in District 14B. I was born and raised in St. Cloud. I went through the St. Cloud public school system. Whoa, how about that? I attended St. Cloud State for a while, but eventually graduated from St. John's University with a degree in business and economics. I was very fortunate to then be accepted to Harvard, and I went to Harvard, got an MBA, later on got a master's in government from Georgetown University. Like Dan, I'm in the real estate business, and so I know a lot about negotiating with people and trying to get people to come to a deal. And I have been in the legislature before. I got elected in 2014, but I was in the legislature in the late 90s and the 2000s. In 2006, I decided to get out of the legislature, went back into the private sector, but again, went back in 2014 and actually got named to chair a committee now called the Committee on Ways and Means. But when I was in before, I chaired the bonding committee. I was able to get people to come to a deal. There weren't any bonding bills that didn't happen the years I was there, and one of the bills that I carried was the bill that built the building that you are in right now, the Miller Library. In fact, I carried a lot of bills for really redoing a lot of St. Cloud State. Centennial Hall, Brown, Riverview, Lawrence, this building. I've got a lot of love for St. Cloud State, and so it's great to be here and look forward to your questions and talking more.
All right, we'll begin now our round of questions. First one will be directed at Zach Dorholtz. You have 2 minutes. The St. Cloud area is near multiple colleges and universities. What would you do, if anything, to decrease student debt?
Well, once again, it's the first thing I brought up. We're speaking to students here, many of which will end up with a lot of student debt. I have more than my fair share. And when I did serve during the 2013-14 session, we froze tuition. MnSCU and the University of Minnesota. That's the first step to decreasing debt. Is stop the skyrocketing costs of college. We also created and started a program to help folks refinance their student loans at a lower interest rate. And like I said, today you can get a used car loan for cheaper than you can student loans. And I think that's robbery. You should be making money off of people making an investment in all of our future. Because this education you're going to get isn't just for you. It's for our entire country, our state, and our community. We're all in this together. And we're also all in this $1 trillion debt nationwide. And I'd love to be able to address this on a federal issue, but we haven't. This is near and dear to me, and if elected, I'm going to work to freeze tuition for a full biennium, a real, genuine freeze, and start funding the programs that will help folks refinance their loans at a more reasonable rate than the Fed's carried off for right now. Thank you.
Jim Knobloch, same question. St. Cloud area is near multiple colleges and universities. What would you do, if anything, to decrease student debt?
Well, this is a very important issue, and it's an issue that I've worked on before. I actually spent 3 years on the Board of Regents at St. John's University, and so I've been involved in many, many discussions in terms of how can we make college affordable for students, how can we get students to get to a college without a huge amount of debt. But I've also been involved at the legislative level on this. If you go back 2 years ago, I was one of the people in 2015 that was a champion for a significant increase in funding to the MnSCU system and a significant increase in funding more for MnSCU than the U of M, which if you look at the per student funding, gets vastly more money per student in state money than the MnSCU system does. In the bill that we eventually passed that governs the MnSCU system right now, we had, for those people who are from families that don't get Pell Grants, don't get state grants, we had about a 3% increase in the first year, and then this year we froze tuition. And so like Zach, I think that we really need to try to keep tuition under control, particularly for those people who are from needy families, from challenged families. You know, free college tuition for everyone would be nice, but on the other hand, you know, people who are from wealthy families, I think that they need to be able to contribute. People who can afford it need to be able to pay, because it costs money to run an institution like this and run it right and give everyone a good education. Beyond that, though, we also need to look at some of the things that are driving costs. We need to look at various things within the college system. The MnSCU home office is a significant driver of cost that takes a lot of student funding. There are a lot of administrative costs that, if you look historically, we're spending a lot more of the budget on administration than we used to. Another bill I supported that passed this last year would use technology more to get rid of the increasing cost of textbooks. That's a big, big cost, as all of you know, and as someone who's got a couple kids in college knows too. So those are a few ideas I would have, and I see my time is up, so I'll move on to the next question. Or I guess I give it to Zach.
Yeah. Zach, you get up to a minute to amend your original answer.
Let's see if I can get this all in within a minute. So during my opponent's tenure, tuition rose by 160%. I was a freshman when he was in office. I graduated, he was in office. My tuition more than doubled. Second of all, he voted to cut the Pell Grants by $53 million. When I was there, we busted our butt to raise them by $75 million, because it was the low-income students were having more difficulty coming to school. So we expanded access to grants, and we kept costs under control. We went after the MnSCU higher ed office, which I know we both agree on, is bloated. So there's plenty of room to cut. When it comes to tuition and debt, I'd ask you to look who walks the walk and who talks it. And for the one term I was there, I walked the line hard, as Vice Chair of Higher Ed Committee, and I'm going to do that again if you let me send me back to St. Paul.
All right, we're going to move on to our next question. This is going to be directed first to Jim Knobloch. There's a great deal of pressure at the legislature to vote with your political party and the special interests that are funding them. What is your record in voting opposite your political party on bills that have been up for vote in the legislature? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, I do have to respond to a few things Zach said. Yes, I was there during a time of great budget crisis back in the early 2000s, and frankly, I was one of the people that kept higher education from being cut further. If you look back, you will see votes where I proposed more funding than eventually the governor or the Democratic Senate agreed with. And so that was an area that I was trying to struggle and work on. And Pell Grants, Zach, I guess last I heard, I thought that a Pell Grant was a federal grant. Do you mean something else? Okay, well, anyway, they're federal grants, folks. In terms of the questions, this is one of the big differences between us. If you look at the last legislative session, I guess I feel I was one of the people that showed an ability to work across party lines and get things done. The one big bill that got done this last year, the supplemental finance bill, was the bill that I was the House author of. It basically had all the different subjects in it except for transportation, bonding, and taxes. And we did get that bill done because I've got a reputation for being able to work across the aisle and get things done. In fact, the Pioneer Press newspaper rated me this last 2 years as having the most independent bipartisan voting record of any Republican. Zach's record when he was in office is that he voted for every single bill that passed the DFL-controlled House. He was only one of 2 House members that voted for every single bill that passed the DFL-controlled House. So if you are a Democrat and you want someone who's going to vote for every single bill and not exercise his own thinking about it, then you ought to vote for Zach. If you want someone who's more independent and has got a record of being independent, I guess I'd ask for your consideration.
Zach Dorholt, you have 2 minutes to respond to this question. There's a great deal of pressure at the legislature to vote with your political party and the special interests that are funding them. What is your record in voting opposite your political party on bills that have been up for a vote in the legislature?
It is a good question. If we're running to be bipartisan for bipartisan's sake, we want to be representing what we're trying to represent. I'm not shy of my record. I am a Democrat. I don't try to hide that. When I was there, I voted my conscience and my constituents first before voting for my party, and I will continue to do that. Once again, I'm not shy about my record. I'm not afraid to tell you that I'm progressive, that I'm a Democrat. There are several examples of when I did vote against my party. Representative Knobloch refers to this 100% voting with the party that passed the bills. That comparison was made to the then share of Ways and Means. So you can compare one person, make a lot of statistics. I was the only Democrat of the 25 legislators in the entire 6th congressional district. And I went above and beyond to reach out to my neighboring legislators to make sure that we did things not just for St. Cloud, but for the entire area. And there were plenty of bills that were passed that only had my vote that benefited the entire St. Cloud area. I also carried bills, one that my party that angered them was the truck weights bill, which Representative Knobloch carried, and that angered a lot of people in my party. Also voted to keep what was called the Sunset Commission in a bill which my predecessor had authored, Republican, and I thought that was a decent idea. I was the only Democrat who voted against taking that out of that bill. And I worked with Republican Senator John Peterson on many, many different issues. The public-private partnership bill for transportation. You should have seen the emails from a lot of people in my party and some other unions who were just angry. So angry that how could you put your name on that bill, Zach? Because it was about creating conversation for not just my district, but for our entire St. Cloud area.
Jim Knobloch, you went first on this question, so you get up to a minute to add to your answer.
Well, it's easy to introduce a bill at the legislature and say you're for something, and then never have anything happen with the bill and never try to move it or promote it. Again, I would just remind you, going back, if you look at Zach's record, the 2 years he was in, when the Democrats controlled the House of Representatives, he was one of only 2 House members out of 134 that voted for every single one of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bills that passed the Minnesota House that year. By comparison, myself, a nonpartisan source, St. Paul Pioneer Press newspaper, rated my voting record for the last 2 years as the most independent, most bipartisan voting record of any Republican. So you got the Republicans here, the most conservative, extreme ones. You got the Democrats over here. I was here in the middle. So if you want someone, again, who is, I believe, using some independent thinking, listening to your district, doing what he thinks is right, listening to his constituents, and not just walking with what his party wants him to do, I guess I would submit that I'm your guy, and I could give plenty of examples, such as the North Star corridor that I pushed, where I went against my party.
All right, our third question is going to be directed to Zach Dorholtz. The Republican Party has been on the forefront of legislative attempts to limit the rights of the LGBT community. Many states have experienced a severe economic fallout from initiatives like this, or like these. Is it fiscally irresponsible to push laws of this kind, and why?
So this would probably be the most striking difference between my opponent and me, is where we stand on supporting those who are different than each other. I was the co-author of the bill that legalized same-sex marriage in Minnesota. I'm not shy of that. I have a degree in marriage and family therapy from Catholic University, and I believe that brought people together. The bill you referred to, I believe in this question, is also known in North Carolina as House Bill 2. And if anybody watch ESPN and follow college sports, and a few of you, then you notice that the NCAA, what did they do? They pulled their tournament games out of North Carolina because of that bill. Because that bill purposefully treats people whom we perceive to be different than us as lesser. So North Carolina lost $17 million in tax revenue due to those NCAA tournament games being pulled from their state. We talk about these things as social issues, don't we? But they've become more and more as time has gone on as economic issues. Whether it's companies pulling from Indiana for their anti-gay bills, or other states, or threatening states to leave. These bills are not just purposefully divisive, but they have created economic dry zones and places where awesome college activity used to happen. North Carolina was known for their big games, and NCAA is not going to be playing their playoff games there because their governor and legislature chose to treat others whom they perceive to be different than them as less than equal.
Jim Knobloch, same question. The Republican Party has been on the forefront of legislative attempts to limit the rights of the LGBT community. Many states have experienced severe economic fallout from initiatives like these. Is it fiscally irresponsible to push laws of this kind, and why?
Well, first of all, let me say one thing that I've done for the LGBT community in the past 2 years, and that is that we've had a problem with the Human Rights Office in St. Cloud for a while not being adequately funded. This goes back a number of years. In fact, when I took office, I think or shortly after that, we were down to having one person there 1 day a month to address human rights issues in the St. Cloud area. And something that I got in the supplemental budget bill that I was the House author of, that I said I was able to get passed into law this year, was an appropriation to hire 2 full-time people that are now going to be staffing that St. Cloud Human Rights Office. And they're going to work on all sorts of human rights issues. I mean, they're going to be able to work on LGBT discrimination issues, but also racial, religion, other discrimination issues. And so that is something that we've really needed, I think. Protecting human rights is something that government should do, and I'm proud to have been involved in it. The bill that Zach is talking about really is talking about transgender issues. And where we differ is I think that people, yes, transgenders have rights, but there's a long-established right to privacy in this country, too. And right now, what Zach is basically opposed to is a bill that I signed on to that said that if a man, for example, a person who's born a man, decides that really he is a woman and wants to go into a woman's locker room and wants to shower next to women in women's locker rooms, that no, that person can't do that. You know, there are no absolute rights in this country. You've got the right to freedom of speech, but you don't have the right to lie about someone and cause them financial harm. You got the right to keep and bear arms, but appropriately not if you've been certified to be mentally ill and dangerous. Transgenders have rights, but other people have rights too. And I think that it's appropriate that we pass legislation that says that other people's rights to privacy are protected.
Zach Dorholt, you went first with this question, so you've got up to a minute to add to your original answer.
So hear this. Transgender, people who are transgender have rights, but the bill he's referring to is identical to the bill that passed in North Carolina. It's not about privacy. It's about dividing us and distracting us from issues that really affect us. I'm a therapist at a mental health center. I've worked with members of the LGBT community, LGBTQIAP, all. And time after time, I come across one or another who's been kicked out of their house or shamed by their community or their church simply because of who they are. Many of them have taken drastic measures to end their own life. This bill is harmful, it is downright mean, it is disrespectful to everyone here.
All right, we're going to move on to our fourth and last question, and we'll start off with Jim Knobloch. You have 2 minutes to respond to this question. Legislators are often called upon to set priorities between funding for college tuition and other projects, such as the new $90 million legislative office building that was recently built. Did you support funding this building project instead of putting college tuition first? And if so, why or why not?
Well, as the budget chair down at the legislature, we have way more requests come to us for funding various worthy projects than we have funds available. And so to me, you certainly are looking for projects that are unworthy to not fund so you can put them towards good uses. Now, I wasn't in the legislature when the new $90 million legislative office building funding was approved. Zach was, and he voted for it, but I was very opposed to it. I, in fact, tried to stop it with a lawsuit I was involved in. You know, we don't have any more senators or House members than we had 50 years ago. We don't need a new $90 million plush legislative office building. We just don't. And, you know, that's another difference between Zach and I. I mean, Zach voted for it. I made it quite clear that I wouldn't have voted for it. I want to prioritize spending towards important things, higher education being one, education, E12 being another. You know, there's lots of other priorities the state has, but this is one thing that was a big waste of money that should have never been built.
Zach Dorholt, you've got, excuse me, turn my mic on here. Zach Dorholt, you've got 2 minutes to respond to the same question. Legislators are often called upon to set priorities between funding for college tuition and other projects, such as the new $90 million legislative office building that was recently built. Did you support funding this building project instead of putting college tuition first? And if so, why or why not?
Simple answer that yes, I support it. It's a reason of accessibility, and it was one of the few things that folks could pull out of what was, I believe, a good bill to distract, once again, from the real issues. This is the building issue has been an issue that's been kicked down the can for a long time, and it's a complex issue. So I could spend 5 minutes explaining the reasons we need it, but bottom line was accessibility. Running out of room at the Capitol building where the Senate was housed. You couldn't visit with senators. We're talking people use wheelchairs or other devices, mobility devices. It was completely inaccessible. So if you want access to your legislators, we made it easier for you. And at the same time, I froze tuition and added $75 million to the state aid grant program. So, you got a 2 for 1 there.
All right, Jim, now what? You've got up to a minute to add to your original answer.
Well, first of all, the state capitol and the state office building located next to it where a lot of the other legislative offices already are, and which had room for the offices that are now in the new legislative office building, already had handicapped accessibility. But I will agree with Zach that the Capitol needed more accessibility than it had, but some years ago there was a significant renovation project passed to renovate the Capitol. I think just about everyone agrees that we needed to put some more money into renovating it. It hadn't been renovated for a long time, and as part of that we were adding some additional accessibility. But we didn't need to spend $90 million on a new legislative office building to have more accessibility in the Capitol, a different building. Yes, we need accessibility in the Capitol. We mostly had it. We spent the money to make sure we had it. We didn't need to waste $90 million on a new building where the money could have gone to other things that were more important.
All right, that concludes the question part of this debate. So we're going to go down to closing statements. So we'll start with Zach Dorholt. You've got up to 2 minutes to give your closing statement.
2 minutes, and it seemed like a long time. So once again, Zach running for House District 14B. Where he's sitting here today is where I sat for my undergrad, which was community development and film studies. I received a master's in rehabilitation counseling. Went on to get another graduate certificate degree in marriage and family therapy. My full-time job is dedicated to helping people improve their lives. And that's what I believe, as late Senator Paul Wellstone says, politics is about the improvement of people's lives. Representative Knobloch and I, we're not the government, okay? Government is not a spectator sport. It involves everyone here to be involved. Whether you're a student, mom, dad, sister, brother, it requires everybody to be involved. And if elected, I'm going to make sure that we prioritize inclusivity. We prioritize some campaign finance, so all these outside mailers bombarding you, don't do that anymore. I know it's getting annoying. I want that outside money gone, out of politics. We need campaign finance reform now. And I'm going to make sure that, bottom line, every time we look at the numbers when a budget is put in front of me, that we never forget the lives that are attached to those dollars. Because there's more, so much more about just dollars and cents down in the Capitol. I think I did a pretty good job. Lost by 69 votes. Not giving up. And appreciate your support. I'll be hanging around afterwards to answer any questions you have. I'm a professional listener, so I'd rather hear what you have to say than stand up here on the microphone.
Jim Knobloch, 2 minutes. Jim Knobloch, 2 minutes for closing statement.
Sure. Well, thank you also, everyone, for coming, and I really appreciate your coming and getting educated and being involved here, and I will also be staying afterwards to see if people have any questions they want to ask of me. You know, St. Cloud State has a real special place in my heart. I talked to you a little bit about how I had, a few classes here as an undergrad, but my parents actually met here. My parents actually met at St. Cloud State. In fact, my mom used to live in Lawrence Hall, and it was really special for me when Lawrence Hall needed to be renovated, that I actually got to carry the bill that had the money for renovating Lawrence Hall, the place that my mom used to live once upon a time. And as I mentioned before, and there's materials in the back on it too, I've been involved over the years in doing a tremendous number of projects here at St. Cloud State. I am the author of the Eastman Hall Bill too. I'd really like to see that get done. We passed it in the House. It didn't make it through the Senate. I wish the governor would call us back to a special session so that we could accomplish that, but only the governor can call us back, and so that's really his call. But if you do re-elect me, you can certainly be confident that I will be fighting for St. Cloud State. And as I mentioned too, I'm someone who works with both sides of the aisle. I've got a demonstrated record of working with both sides of the aisle. This last year, the one major finance bill that got done and passed into law was the one that I was the House author of. But we had a lot of good things for it for our community. I talked about the human rights bill, but we also had early childhood funding, significant early childhood funding for District 742. We had increased funding to combat sex trafficking, which has really been a scourge in this community. We had a lot of really great things in that bill that are helping our community. And my record is one of working across party lines. My record is one of voting with the Democrats when I think that that's appropriate, or voting against the Republicans if I think that's appropriate. And I'd appreciate your willingness to consider me as someone who really listens to both sides and does what is right. Thanks a lot for coming today.
Is that right? Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Our last candidates are Tama Tice and Eric Putnam for House District 14A. Sorry, I didn't get to the microphone again. Each candidate will have 90 seconds for an intro, and then they can go on.
Start off with Tama Tice, yes.
Good afternoon. First, I'm going to apologize for being late. I had a previous appointment that was going to overlap with the 5 o'clock, so I got here as soon as I could, got stuck in a little traffic, but it's St. Cloud. It's not as bad as St. Paul. I've been in the community for 36 years. My husband and I have had a remodeling company, which we no longer have. It is closed. We have a couple of companies and some rental properties. We have 3 sons, and they've gone through the school district here, and also at the technical college. They both have degrees in sales and management. I myself got my degree at the technical college in microcomputer support and network administration. I did an associate's degree, so the classes that I needed to come here to classes I needed at St. Cloud State, I came here on campus and enjoyed that as well. I've got, like I said, sons, and then I've got a grandson and a granddaughter, so I'm very happy to be doing that. I sit right now, going for my 3rd term as state representative in District 14A, but I'm on Commerce Committee, I'm on Government Operations and Elections, Capital Investment, which is a bonding committee, and also I'm Vice Chair of Aging and Long-Term Care. It's just always a really good time to be back here on campus and to see everybody, and to also meet with folks and find out what's going on here. My best way of knowing what's going on here is by being with people and having them come to visit us as well. So I look forward to another great year.
Eric Putnam, 90 seconds, opening statement.
How's it going? My name's Eric. It's wonderful to see so many of you here today. It's absolutely fantastic to see people who have such a deep investment in democracy and extra credit. It's a pretty wonderful thing to see. You know, the only thing that would make this more lovely if this wasn't the build-up to an election. If we were doing this, and it was like a Tuesday afternoon in January. But so often we think of citizenship as having to do with only elections and not with participating in public life. Now, you may ask, think why we don't do this on Tuesdays in January. And I think it's by and large because St. Paul feels pretty far away. Because a lot of our legislators, and the legislative session that we just endured was a train wreck of marginal competence and inadequacy. It's understandable that we feel disaffected from politics. It's completely reasonable. But that's why I'm running. I'm a professor at St. John's and St. Ben's, and I teach about citizenship. I've trained probably 1,000 people over the past 20 years in the skills that it takes to be a citizen, to research and understand arguments, to speak on behalf of values and advocate for what you truly believe, and most important, to earn consensus and build agreement. That's what I've done for 20 years, and that's the skill set that I'll bring to the legislature.
Okay, our first question is going to be directed to Tama Tice. You've got 2 minutes to answer this question, with many people expressing concerns about wasting their vote depending on who they voted for. What is your opinion on a preferential, or what's called a ranked choice voting system?
Okay. Being a government operations and elections. We've heard a little bit about this. And I will say a little bit about this. We really haven't discussed it a whole lot. One of the other things, we've been talking about the other parts of elections. I'm not really sure I completely agree with this at this time. Just because I think there's a few variables in play that we aren't hearing about, and that's exactly where I'm sitting right now. I look forward to more discussion. And there are a lot of folks down in at the office that will tell us what exactly is happening. But right now, we're not really hearing a lot of need for this. I'm not hearing it from my constituents. I'm not getting emails about it. And for me, that's the best barometer that I have to find out what folks are thinking of. I hope that we have more discussions. I find it interesting, but I'm not there yet. I think there's, like I said, we just really have a lot of discussions right now. We're more interested in finding out ways to replace, as a committee, we need to replace the voting machines. We're talking about doing some online things, and that, of course, is taking a farther seat up the road, if you will, in things that we need to address. I wish we would have more people that would get interested in that. One of the cool things that we had is we had a group of 6th graders come and talk to us about 16-year-olds registering to vote. It was wonderful to see them come, and that was their passion. And I hope that more people decide to do that, and we talk about these issues, because unless I'm hearing it from a lot of people, I'm not really thinking it's on the radar. So when you ask me about that, yeah, I know a little bit about it, but I don't know enough to make a good judgment at this time, because I'm not seeing it from the folks that I represent.
Eric Putnam, same question, 2 minutes that you have in response. With many people expressing concerns about wasting their vote, depending on whom they voted for, what is your opinion on a preferential, or what's called a ranked choice voting system?
I was kind of excited when I saw this as a question, and I had an opportunity to research it and learn a lot about it. I thought that was pretty neat. And from my perspective, anything that adds to democracy, that increases our choice, that gets more people involved in politics, that's something that we need to look very seriously at. Especially if you look at the presidential election that we are currently either enjoying or enduring, depending on your perspective. Can you not imagine how ranked choice voting would have changed those primaries? And here's the thing, they've had ranked choice voting in Minneapolis since 2009. This isn't something brand new. And you know what else is weird? What I found out when I was researching this is that they've had it in Australia for 100 years. And some of the benefits that we get from ranked choice voting that I think are really fascinating is, one, it's much cheaper because you don't have runoffs. Secondly, which is equally important, perhaps in my perspective even more important, you don't have low turnout in runoff elections. So you have an increased turnout. More people are participating in the political process when you do ranked choice voting. So I think that it's actually a very fascinating thing that's worthy of a serious intentional look for lots of different elections, especially for this last reason. I suggested before, when I told you a little bit about my background, that I study citizenship, public arguments, those kinds of things. You know what ranked choice voting does? Is it forces a departure from the binary of us versus them, or me versus him, or Republicans versus Democrats, because you have to work for second place too. So what that eventually does is it decreases the vitriol, it decreases the binary, so that people have to appeal to multiple communities simultaneously, instead of just defining themselves as the opposite of their opposition. So, from my perspective, the benefits of ranked choice voting require and suggest a real investment of energy to consider and research and see how it will work. The one thing that's problematic about ranked choice voting, when you ever see an argument against it, is that people think it's too complicated. Well, I have more faith in voters than that. We can figure it out, and the benefits are good enough.
Tamara, because you went first with this question, so you have up to a minute to add anything that you like.
Right now, I would say that we're hearing more about how to get rid of the current system of voting where we're not doing all the electoral votes. That's what I'm hearing more interest of. And if this truly is another avenue that we need to look at when it comes to elections, I'm very open to it, to learning more, to hearing it. And I hope that some of you do take the opportunity to come and see me in St. Paul, and we can have that discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Second question, we directed first to Eric Putnam. In a school,
He's been doing is bringing about this great program that identifies kids in the school system, and I got 6th through 9th graders. And they identify them as students that need help because they're having truancy issues, they're having just doing their work issues, they're not paying attention, they're not doing homework, and they will identify these kids. What Tony does is he actually comes into the like SCSU and the higher education and tries to find folks who will be mentors for these kids. And that's what they will be doing. They will be with them in school, and they will be with them out of school. So not only does this child benefit from that extra work, but they also benefit from the fact that here's a person going through school that has experience of some of the things that they need to do when they are teaching to make all their students feel this welcome. I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and those are the opportunities I look for in education, where we can have these partnerships. And I've been talking to several folks in the community who know that their workforce is going to be only covered by about 40% from upcoming graduates. And they're working together to figure out ways to get people more involved in going into these occupations, what they can do to get people motivated to do this. And I'm hoping that the more we bring programs like this into our community, the more we set that partnership going before anybody even thinks about maybe what area they want to go into. And when I look at areas of special education, and there's so many issues, I don't even want to go into that one, about what we're doing, I just really think that having this partnership beforehand is going to just enrich us for the years to come.
Okay, Eric, what do you want first with this question, or should we get up to a minute to add to your original answer?
Well, the bulk of Tam's answer was about the Santa Foundation, which really doesn't have anything to do with teacher training. But it's still something that I'd like to talk about, because it has to do with the relationship between our local schools and St. Paul. See, the Santa Foundation, the grant, which is not a horrible idea, but it's not the best one. It's a duplication of a program that we already had in the public schools called Access and Opportunity, that was already being run here through St. Cloud State. And my objection to the Santa Foundation, which is not across the board, it's not a horrible idea, but we do not need to bring mentors from St. Paul to St. Cloud. We do not need to outsource the mentoring of our children. Anyone who's mentored kids knows that the benefit of mentoring is just as often to the mentor as it is to the mentee. So from my perspective, that money could have been much more profitably invested in local nonprofits to do that kind of mentoring. Could invest it in other kinds of programs that are much more local in their nature and not importing people from St. Paul to mentor our children.
All right, our third question will be directed first to Tama Tice, and you have 2 minutes to respond to this. In passing a bonding bill which pays for infrastructure and new development, is that an essential duty of the state legislature? Please explain.
When I look at what we constitutionally are required to do, it's public education, it is public safety, and it is infrastructure. And when we looked at the bonding bill, that's exactly what Chair Torkelson included. He had some great projects. He really looked at what the needs of the state of Minnesota were, and he included that in the bonding bill. So the House passed the bonding bill. It is required to have a 2/3 majority, a supermajority. We had more votes than that. This was an excellent bill. It got messed up in the Senate because we thought we had an agreement that this bill would go forward. Instead, there was a last-minute amendment thrown on, a handwritten paper amendment that totally killed it in the Senate. They put the amendment on. Their intention was to bring it back into the House. We had already adjourned. Our work was done. We passed our bills. We did not have any sitting on the table. It was either because of a governor vetoing it or because the Senate didn't do their work. They didn't do what they said they were going to do. That's very frustrating because we had a lot of infrastructure. We had money here for St. Cloud State. We had it in St. Cloud a lot of money that didn't get taken advantage of. We need to have that bonding bill. It was a great bonding bill. There was no question about it. We were hearing about it from everybody, not just one side, everybody. And we had more votes than we needed to pass it through. So when I look at what we do in a bonding bill, this is a great example. We looked at what our needs were, and we traveled, and I did travel with the bonding committee to look at these. And some of them, at first, when you hear about them, you go, maybe not so much. But a lot of those were schools that were technical colleges that were looking to upgrade their labs. To me, that is a huge need that that Minnesota needs. We need more folks in the medical profession, and we're not seeing that.
Eric Putnam, same question, you've got 2 minutes. Is passing a bonding bill, which pays for infrastructure and new development, an essential duty of the state legislature? Please explain.
The notion of an essential duty gets to really what the core of government is and should be. I think that's the phrasing of the question, was essential duty. And I agree with Tama, absolutely. It's a constitutional responsibility, but it is also, I think, a moral one. There are certain issues when it comes to government, things that private enterprise can't take care of. This is an old Adam Smith thing. The role of government is to take care of things that private enterprise can't do profitably. Sorry for the Adam Smith line, but I'm a prof and this is a school, so you know. The thing is that there's a kind of moral obligation to do those things that have to be done that can't be done any other way. And so yes, I absolutely support the idea of a bonding bill for transportation being essential. And when I first started to run for office, I was talking to a man at a rally, and he had driven truck for 50 years. He says he probably lost about $1 million over the course of the year. He drove a truck for 50 years. Imagine how soon he could have retired if we had roads that actually worked. Think of the real human cost of not having transportation. And we realize that it absolutely has to be a moral responsibility and an absolute priority, which makes the failure of the legislature to do anything about it that's much more problematic.
Tama Tice, you went first with this, so you get up to a minute to add to your original answer.
Any one of us that drives back and forth from the cities regularly, or even anybody that drives a truck and goes across the state regularly, knows that when you're going to St. Paul, Minneapolis, you don't drive in the right lane because it's really bumpy, and that's because of the truck traffic. We've been talking about, and I've been advocating for a third lane going back and forth on 94. And the reason of that is to get the commerce moving through the state. GNP, I want Golden Plum, GNP, has stated that they lose millions of dollars to the trucks on the road just because of the wear and tear of the trucks, the gasoline, they have a perishable product that has to get going, and it just really makes me mad that we had to get stuck on this and that somebody didn't do what they said what they were going to do in getting this passed. We need that money. We need to be working on our roads and bridges, and we should have done it yesterday.
All right, our fourth and final question, we'll start off with Eric Putnam, and it's this question, you've got 2 minutes to respond. With the possibility of increased revenue from the sales tax, do you support or oppose Sunday liquor sales? Why or why not?
That gets a giggle. It was fascinating. Again, as soon as I decided to run, as soon as that little bit saying that I was going to appear in the newspaper, I got an email about 30 seconds afterward from a guy who desperately wants to have liquor sales on Sunday. And to me, this is one of those fascinating moments when we actually do get some insight into the nature of government as well. Because it used to be, sure, there was like a moral or religious reason for us not having alcohol sales on Sundays. But nowadays, it's because of competing interests. Government, in this point, has to decide, well, you know, should I support the interest of the restaurant owner who doesn't want alcohol sold on Sundays because he wants people watching the Vikings game in his bar? Or do we look at the interests of the liquor stores that would like the increased revenue? For me, when I think about this issue, we have to look at the balance between those two things. And I think about all of the different interests even involved in selling alcohol on a Sunday. Some folks might not want to work on a Sunday, and they might have to now if we're selling alcohol on Sundays. That actually was a big thing, I think, in Australia and in Ireland when they talked about selling alcohol on Sundays. The big interest group that didn't want to do it were the retail clerks who were going to have to do it. That's something that we need to consider very seriously before we actually go forward with something like this. But more importantly to me is the issue that how this affects small business owners more so than it would large corporate businesses. So a large business, like a corporate booze store, whatever that would be, has a different relationship to Sunday sales than would a small liquor store. We need to protect the interests of small business owners in this way. And secondly, something that I would take as a requirement before I would support legislation that would do this would be that that it not simply be a municipal issue as it currently is, because then that's a completely uneven playing field between different cities. So that's my take on the issue of Sunday sales.
Okay, Timothy, same question. You've got 2 minutes. With the possibility of increased revenue from the sales tax, do you support or oppose Sunday liquor sales? Why or why not?
Currently, I'm not. This past, after the last session, I did do a survey, and I surveyed the whole district, so whoever sent back a survey, thank you. Because it's my way of checking to see where we are at this. When I first started in 2013, this district was no. But in a few short years, when I surveyed in the summer, it was pretty even. It was pretty even. But I will tell you that you can now have a beer when you go to the hockey game, because I did get that passed. What I would like to see is maybe a larger study of, are we really losing that much revenue, or is it just imagined revenue? Because what would you hear from a lot of the stores is they really aren't going to be gaining a lot of revenue from being open on Sunday. What they're going to do is spread it out over 7 days rather than 6 days. And when I look at Theas, who lives in Luxembourg, and she has a small store with her brothers, and she's the one who typically mans it. She's going to have to work Sunday now, or somebody's going to have to work Sunday. And that might not seem like a big deal, and you might say, well, she doesn't have to open. But a large part of Theas's business is trying to get people to come to her business. She's a small outfit. She doesn't get the pricing that everybody else does because she doesn't buy on a grand scale. She's not with anybody else. She's on her own. So is she going to make that much money, and is it going to be that much additional sales? Most likely not. What we hear from a lot of folks that live close to the border is they're going to go over there anyway because it's cheaper, because we tax our booze more. That doesn't bring revenue into our community. If you're talk to the folks in Duluth that go to school up there. They're going to tell you they go to Wisconsin because they're not paying as much money. So when we look at, and I wish somebody really would do a really good study on this, and I will tell you as a parent, I've gone to Florida shopping with my kid, and they have liquor in the grocery store. So not only is my grocery store heap full, but now I got to buy his liquor too.
All right, Eric Putnam, you went first with this question, so you get up to a minute to add to your answer.
You know, I applaud Tama for surveying the district on this question. I think that's a really good idea. And also the balanced approach to thinking, good or bad in what ways, I think is really fascinating. And I also think it's nice to have beer at hockey games. That sounds like a pretty cool deal too. Like, I'm not anti-beer in any way. But I do want to make this a point of contrast in that I think that bill was a great thing, but that's not my priority. That's not something that I'm going to say was a major accomplishment of mine if I'm in legislation to do these kinds of things. 15% of the kids in St. Cloud are in poverty. This issue is a fascinating one to me, but it is in no way a priority.
Okay, that concludes our questions. We just have now closing statements, and we're going to start off with Tamatai's up to 2 minute closing statement.
I just want to thank you all for the opportunity and for being here. It's nicer to have a full house than just a few folks here. So really, it makes what we say feel a little bit truer, a little bit better, because you are all witnesses to what we think. And when you go down there, you don't always get to pick which bills you carry. A lot of times your community comes to you and says, this is important to us. So while liquor at the hockey center might not be my priority, it was a priority enough for St. Cloud State to come to me and ask me to carry it. And those are the types of things you deal with all the time. Sometimes you don't even agree with the bill 100% of the time. But somebody's asking you to carry it, and they have some pretty good darn reasons to do it. And that's why I think you'll see each one of us carrying bills that you might say, oh, I didn't see that one happening. But because our constituents and our folks asked us to carry it, we do it. At least you should be doing it, because that's what your community wants. And you have to always work bipartisanly, because it isn't always just this issue or that issue. And yes, we do vote against what the rest of our caucus might think. It happens all the time. I don't vote just party lines. It really does. Very few people can say that they don't. But I think what you need to look at too is, I invest in this community. I've been here for 36 years. This this is my home. And it will be my home probably for a very long time. And the only time it won't is when my husband buys a place down south and we'll go there for a couple months in the winter because he's too cold to be up here. But this really is my home. This is where my kids are settling. I love this place. I love this town. I love the folks I'm working with. We have a wonderful crew, and I'm very proud to be from St. Cloud.
Eric Putnam, you've got 2 minutes for a closing statement.
I want to thank you all for being here too. I think this is a wonderful thing. This is really why we're supposed to be doing this, is for greater investment in public issues, greater dialogue, greater engagement, greater accountability to our politicians, so that we have to explain ourselves to you, I think is a really good thing. And that's especially important given that what we just found out today, that our two races, mine and Tema's and Zach and Jim's, are the two most expensive races in the state right now because of outside money that's pouring in. And frankly, from my perspective as someone who studies these things, that's kind of hurtful. I don't really like that a whole lot. I don't want to be part of the problem, but sometimes you got to be part of the problem to fix it. And so that's part of my approach. You know, this actually happened this morning. My son was homesick today, so I called in to Oak Hill to tell him that he wasn't going to be there. And I said, yeah, you know, Phineas Putnam isn't going to come to school today. Yeah, his name's Phineas, don't make fun of me. I said, yeah, Phineas Putnam isn't going to come to school today. And the person who answered the phone said, oh, is this Eric? And I said, yeah, this is me. And she goes, I just heard this thing on the radio about you. Were you in the legislature when they voted to build the Senate office building? Nope. Are you in the legislature right now? Nope. I just saw this, I just heard this ad, or I just saw this, I think she heard it because it's on the TV too, that blamed you for the Senate office building.
I saw that too.
Is this ad kind of crazy? Yep, it is. I think we deserve so much better than the kinds of negative stuff that are going to be coming at us right now. And I think we need fundamental transformation, not just in the legislature and how it does business, but in our civic culture more generally. We need folks who are independent-minded, who don't need parties. For me, a party is a tool to fix a problem, not an identity. And so I hope that you'll send me to St. Paul. I thank you for being here. I thank you for your attention. And I hope that we can work together after November.
Thank you, David.
Thank you everyone for coming. Oh yeah, just talking to the mic now. Thank you so much for coming. Again, this was an idea that we had at the beginning of the school year. We didn't actually think was going to happen, and it did, and people showed up. So thank you so much. The only thing we ask of you now is that you show up to the polls on election day or before. You can vote early now. So again, vote often, only once this election, and vote informed, and make sure that you're making choices that represent you. So again, thank you so much. And register. Thank you, Todd. Again, thank you so much to our debate moderator and our timekeepers, no matter how much I had to talk them into it. And thank you so much for our candidates. It's always lovely to see you.
And I'd also like to say, make sure we have literature from both parties, the candidates running, and it's going to be on the table along with their signs, so you can actually put a face to the candidates for the signs you see all around our community. So thank you guys.